10. Welcome to your first recorded PowerPoint for health and social care. I do know this is a little bit different. I haven't sent you anything like this before, but I do hope that it is useful for you, especially as now we need to start component 3 in preparation for your exam in February. The quicker we start this, the more time we have to practice mocks and exam questions. So each week I'll give you one or two PowerPoints, a worksheet and a quiz to complete. The most important thing you do is to watch and listen to the PowerPoint and make notes. The quiz is going to be really good just to check your understanding of each PowerPoint that we cover weekly too. You'll need to take notes on the PowerPoints that you are listening to, either in your book, if you've got any space that is, otherwise on lined paper and then placed into a file, or if you've got access to it, a laptop to type it up. Everything we're going to go over now, from now until I next see you, will be vital for your exam in February 21. So once you've listened to the PowerPoint, if you could just drop me an email, or even on the Health and Social Care Instagram page, if you could actually just let me know that you've watched the PowerPoint. Any feedback as well would be gratefully appreciated. Believe it or not, I do miss you, Year 10. It does seem really weird just to be speaking to you over the PowerPoint, although I don't have to worry about you, Danae or Daniela, meerkatting around the room. But I do miss your great discussions in class, Madison, some superb discussion. Yes, it'd be great to see you again. But until then, hopefully these PowerPoints will help. So it's fine me saying you're starting component 3, but what is component 3, I hear you say? Component 3 is very much focused on health and well-being. So what is it to be healthy? Factors that can affect somebody's health. You'll be looking at how you can identify ill health, understand how to interpret basic health data such as a BMI chart, and then you'll also get to design a health and wellbeing improvement plan for a particular individual. Today's lesson will look at what is health, so a definition of health, holistic health, emotional wellbeing, genetic illness and disease, and acute and chronic illnesses. You will need to make sure you have got notes on all 5 of these aspects. So the WHO's definition of health, which is the World Health Organization, responsible for the health and well-being globally. At the moment they're very much involved in the COVID-19 situation, suggesting and recommending the best ways in which it can be tackled. They define health as a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Now, if you're wondering what infirmity means, it means physical or mental weakness. So it's not just focused on physical, it's physical, mental and social well-being. You're going to need to make notes on this PowerPoint here. So it's looking at a holistic definition of health and well-being. Holistic means whole. So it's a combination of physical, social and emotional well-being rolled into one. Physical health, looking at our bodies, keeping them working as well as they can. Social aspects, and this is a big factor at the moment in the lockdown, where many people are suffering with their mental health, as they're, especially those that are shielding, as they're unable to get out every day. They may not be able to go and meet family as often as they'd like. And it's really important that our social needs are met. We need to have good relationships. We need to get out and socialise and speak to other people. Really helps with our mental health. Emotional aspects of well-being. So we should be feeling relaxed, happy, loved. And if we haven't got that, if we are in a situation where we're feeling very stressed, where we're feeling alone, isolated, these can really affect our mental well-being. On this slide, and if you are wanting to investigate emotional wellbeing a little bit further, I've popped a link to a YouTube clip on emotional wellbeing. Now I just want you to take a few minutes to actually have a think about what things could negatively affect our mental and emotional health and well-being. At the moment, it's a really good, where a lot of us are going through lockdown where we're not seeing our friends and our relatives, and that may give you a good insight to what could negatively affect how we feel mentally and emotionally. So try to just have a little list of all things that can affect our mental health and well-being. And then when we move on to the next slide, so you can pause this now, write a few notes about aspects you think or factors that you think affect our emotional mental health and well-being, and then when we go to the next slide you'll be able to see some of the suggestions that I have made. So I've just made a list of a few things that can affect our emotional health and well-being. There are many more factors that could affect us, but these are just a few that I've written down. So isolation, lockdown, some people may cope better with this than others. Imagine if you were in a family where it was you were being neglected, or there was lots of family arguments that could massively impact on your health and well-being, your emotional health and well-being. Family and friends can affect the way that you are feeling, including personal relationships, having a relationship that breaks down. Bullying, nasty comments, they can always affect how we feel. Self-image or self-esteem, if they are low or we don't think as positively about ourselves, this can affect us. Finances, money problems, this can make people feel low, especially at the moment where people are being furloughed or they've lost their job, being made redundant. It causes great anxiety as people worry about how they're going to pay their bills, their mortgage, feed their family. Injury, illness or disability can affect how we feel. Stresses at work, home or school. A lack of exercise, the inability to get out can make us feel low. Life events such as the death of a close relative, friends, things like divorce can all impact on the way we feel. With life events such as death of a close relative at the moment, it's made even harder by the fact that you aren't able to hug at the moment, you aren't able to console each other in a way that you normally would. Other aspects could be drinking, drugs or any addiction. You may have some things that I haven't placed on this list, and perhaps you would like to email them to me so that I could sort of justify whether you're correct. But yes, please make sure you've got these down so you're aware of the different types of things that can affect people emotionally and mentally. So I just discussed some of the ways in which emotional and mental health can be affected, and one of these, which we're going to now, can be genetic inheritance, such as you've genetically inherited a disease or an illness from your parents. Genetic means that it is inherited, passed down from one generation to the other. Genetic illnesses. Here are some examples of genetic illnesses. Now, it's really important that you are aware of all of these forms of genetic illnesses. So I want you to pause the PowerPoint and I want you to quickly go and research haemophilia, Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, Marfan syndrome and Huntington's disease, and I'd like you to make a few notes on each of these genetic illnesses. I will be going through some of them, but you will need to make sure that you have got all of them. To help you understand how genetic conditions are inherited, there is a short YouTube clip, which I will also stick the link to on Show My Homework, where it briefly explains how illnesses and diseases are passed on from generations. The first genetic condition I'll discuss is Down syndrome. Down syndrome is caused by having more or less than 23 pairs of chromosome. As women age, they are at greater risk of having a child that has Down syndrome. In a majority of cases, it cannot be inherited, but occurs at the time of conception. Children with Down syndrome will typically have some level of learning disability, and they will have characteristic facial features. Problems that Down syndrome children and adults tend to suffer with are heart problems, difficulties with seeing and hearing, but the condition affects children and adults in different ways. Some children are more aggressive than others. Some are more learning needs are more dramatic than others. The condition varies remarkably. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder that mostly affects the lungs. It can include people really struggling to breathe, coughing up mucus, getting frequent lung infections, much more prone to lung infections than the average person. They have to be very, very careful that they take their medication, that they don't put themselves at risk. At the moment in the COVID-19 situation, those children with cystic fibrosis are being asked to shield because they have a greater risk of getting COVID-19 and not being able to fight it. The lifespan of someone who has cystic fibrosis is shorter than the average person. I have included a link on here to explain to you in a little bit more depth what cystic fibrosis is. To help us understand how cystic fibrosis can affect our health and well-being, I've put it into categories, the pies: physical, intellectual, emotional, social, just so that you can understand the ways in which it will impact an individual. So physically, it can cause chest infections, damaged lungs, blocked digestive system, lots of coughing, mucus, joint, bone and liver problems. Intellectually, it can mean you miss a lot of time from school, and when you grow up into adulthood, it can mean that you miss time off work. It means that you may have to have treatment in hospital, and that again means that you miss time off school and work, meaning that you could fall behind. Emotionally, it can cause distress. It can make an individual feel different from their peers, the fact that they're having to take medication, the fact that they're having to go to hospital for treatment, the fact that they have to miss out on certain social gatherings so that they're not putting themselves at risk. Socially, it may prevent a person from joining in with activities with others. It can have problems if you play sport, and it may lead to social isolation. The next condition I'm going to discuss is Huntington's disease. This is a condition that stops part of the brain working properly over time. It's passed on and inherited from a person's parents. It gradually worsens over time and is usually fatal over a period of 20 years. So it's a very severe and dangerous disease to have inherited. Next, we have Marfan syndrome. People suffer with this in various degrees of severity. People with Marfan tend to be tall, thin, long arms, fingers and toes. They also have very flexible joints and scoliosis, which is the spine isn't actually straight. It usually has a bend in it or an S shape in it, which causes lots of pain. It affects the connective tissue in the body, and it can really disfigure the body, causing pain. Here is a little explanation of Marfan syndrome: the long arms and fingers, abnormal chest, heart and lung problems, a short torso, long narrow face, high arched neck, the spine, which is not straight in an S shape, flexible joints, flat feet, abnormal heart sounds. It's really important that you understand this next section, which is a predisposition to other conditions. A predisposition means that someone is more likely to suffer from a particular condition due to their genetic factors. So if their parent is carrying the cystic fibrosis gene, then they are more likely to get cystic fibrosis. Someone is carrying a kidney disease gene, then they are more likely to get it. Environmental factors can also impact on health. So if you live in a house that has mold, poor heating, damp, you could be more likely or more predisposed to get asthma or lung conditions. Also, it can be a combination of genetic and environmental. So you may have inherited asthma from one of your parents, yet the environmental factors that you live in the mold, the damp could actually make it worse, and then that could cause you to have severe asthma. We're looking at ill health now. Ill health is a lifestyle factor that can have positive or negative effects on us. If we get ill, it can be an acute illness or it can be a chronic illness, and it's really important that for the exam, for your worksheet and for your quiz, you're aware of the difference between what is chronic and what is acute. So a chronic health means the illness comes on gradually, it's long term, so that's more than 3 to 6 months, and generally be treated but not cured. An example of chronic health conditions are asthma, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, haemophilia, kidney disease, heart disease, hypertension, bipolar disorder. On the other hand, an acute illness comes on quickly, is short term and can be cured. For example, flu, colds, pneumonia, rickets, measles, mumps, indigestion, heartburn, even a heart attack. Regardless if the illness or disease is chronic or acute, it will impact on you. It could affect your physical fitness. It could actually restrict you attending work or school. It could cause you emotional distresses. You might feel low or down or unhappy, and it could remove some of your social opportunities. If you've got flu, you can't really pop out to the local cinema or go out with your mates bowling because you'll be too unwell to do that. Now, if you've got a severe illness or a chronic illness where it's very severe, that may actually remove lots of social opportunities for a long period of time, and they will all affect health and well-being. Hopefully you listened very carefully to the last slide, because I don't want to do it now, but the worksheet that I have provided on Show My Homework is asking you to put all of these chronic or acute illnesses into the table correctly. So it might be worth going back to last slide, having a quick listen and placing these in the table in the correct order. They are on the worksheet that I've placed on Show My Homework. So the final activity, which is also on the worksheet that I've placed in Show My Homework, is about Andrew. Andrew is 45 years old. He has Huntington's disease, a degenerative disorder of the central nervous system. It causes jerky and uncontrollable movements of the limbs. It will eventually affect his motor skills and speech and lead to loss of physical movement. Now, the first question asks, which of Andrew's needs is currently met by the job he does in an office? So, how does having this job with his illness help him physically, intellectually, emotionally and socially? How does that job help his pies? The second question asks, how could his working conditions, such as the layout of his office, be adapted so that he could go on working for longer? So think about his physical disabilities. They will worsen. So what could they do in the office to help him? What could they do socially to support him? Intellectually, emotionally, physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially. How can they keep him working for longer? Hopefully you've made all the notes that you need to on this PowerPoint. It's really important that you keep those because you're going to have to revise them. You need to complete the worksheet, which has got the table and the activity I've just discussed on them. And then there's a quiz on chronic and acute illnesses to check for your understanding. If you have any issues, can you email me or Instagram message me, please, on the Health and Social Care app. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Any feedback is very much appreciated. I thought it would give you a different type of lesson rather than you constantly reading through and me not explaining it. Hope you're well, hope you're safe, and I look forward to sending you a new PowerPoint next week.